for having me.
Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest, I'm not even going to take a break because I am extremely excited to have this man come on the show. As many of you know, there is a U.S. soldier, Army soldier, who has served over 20 years of his life. He has given over 20 years of his life. He has served in the United States Army with honor, distinction, and sacrifice more than many people will. He's also part of the medical community within the military. Many of you know this particular soldier's plight is he has refused orders. Not because he didn't want to go to battle. Nah, that ain't it. This guy's a dedicated warrior. He refused the orders because he felt in his heart, and as an officer in the United States Army, he felt the orders were illegal orders. Now, the gentleman that's coming on as my guest, I'm not only proud to call him a friend, I'm not only proud to know that he's an attorney, in case I ever get into trouble, but because of the fact a lot of people out there, everyone that's listening, I guarantee it, you all know who this man is. The entire world knows who this man is. Because in the beginning of the year, he became internationally famous. Not because he wanted to, but because a lot of people, including myself, made sure that he became famous. He had taken care of one of the Navy SEALs. He represented him in the beginning of the year when we were fighting to make sure that those 3 Navy SEALs were exonerated. And he won, because this was the last one. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard Neal Puckett. Neal, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time out tonight.
Oh, Betty, it's my pleasure. I've never heard anybody say they were excited to talk to me, so this is kind of fun.
Oh, Dan, boy, you know I'm excited to talk to you. Come on, we went through some hell at the beginning of the year.
Sure. Well,
we were successful in that rate.
Right, and that was Matthew McCabe, the Navy SEAL, who was accused of punching the detainee, who was so notorious for masterminding the killing of those 4 Blackwater contractors back in 2004.
Oh yeah, and one of those Blackwater contractors was a personal friend of mine by the name of Scott Halveston.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I
tragedy.
jumped on board, because I got a bunch of messages from a lot of the guys saying, these guys saved, other ones that captured the SOB that killed Scott. And I jumped on board with David and a few other ones, and Graham. And we made you and Matt and the other 2 guys a little bit famous.
I think so. And also, some of your listeners may recall that we also were fortunate enough to be able to represent Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, who this year was elected to Congress from the Florida's District 22 in Fort Lauderdale.
You represented Alan?
Yes, I was his attorney in 2003 in Iraq. Yes.
Oh, damn! I am among greatness here, aren't I? I had no idea. Now I knew that your law firm, Puckett and Farrar, I knew that you guys were involved in the Pendleton 8 cases.
Yes. My law partner Haitham Faraj represented Corporal Thomas, and then he and I together continue to represent Staff Sergeant Frank Woodridge, who's still facing manslaughter charges for what happened at Haditha over 5 years ago, Betty. Over 5 years ago,
yeah.
He's still waiting for his court-martial.
Yeah. We need to get these court-martials taken care of. We need to get them knocked out. This is getting a little ridiculous. Now, you got a new case.
Yes.
That you're dealing with, Lieutenant Colonel Lakin.
Yes.
What is up with that one?
And not necessarily new to your listeners, but new to me. Only about a month ago, I came into the case replacing an earlier attorney who represented Lieutenant Colonel Lakin. Lieutenant Colonel Lakin asked me to represent him, and I, of course, accepted. And he's scheduled for trial a week from tomorrow at Fort Meade, Maryland, on charges of missing movement of an airplane, which was to take him to Fort Campbell, and then also failing to obey his order to report to that unit, dereliction of duty for failing to obey that order, and then 2 counts of failing to report to his brigade commander for a counseling session.
Oh, boy, sounds like a bunch of crock to me.
Well, they really trumped up the charges higher than they needed to be. I think really what's at issue here is his brigade commander wanted to meet with him once, not twice. So there's probably only one legitimate charge there, and you can't be convicted of both failing to obey an order and also dereliction of duty for failing to obey that order. It's just that should have been one charge. So prosecution's really out to get him.
Now, what exactly? I know you can't really go into too much on this because you actually represent. Now, my understanding is he refused the orders based on the fact that he, as an officer in the United States military, which is part of, correct me if I'm wrong, under Title 10, I think that's part of the USC Code, he has an obligation to refuse orders that he does not feel is legal, correct?
I think, Betty, you're correctly stating his position, and I think that's the position that he originally took. Now, there's I hate to break it down too much, but I'm assuming you want some kind of explanation here. That certainly is an obligation, and I think the emphasis has been sort of reversed here. Certainly, the way military law works is no soldier is required to follow an order that is patently illegal, and that means illegal. Okay. I mean, it looks illegal just to the average observer. So an illegal order would be to, from a superior to a subordinate, would be to shoot an unarmed civilian. An illegal order would be to go out and wash and wax my car, my personal car, because that doesn't have a valid military purpose. So those are illegal orders. Lieutenant Colonel Lakin believed that there were serious questions unanswered at the time about the president's legitimacy to hold office, and he still believes that those questions are unanswered. And nobody is more disappointed than Lieutenant Colonel Lakin to have discovered that the military justice system was going to be incapable of answering those questions. So, one of the hopes that he had was that through, if he were charged through the discovery process of having to reveal information that would help in a defense, the military might assist him in getting answers to his questions, which he wanted answered before he deployed. And you were very accurate in pointing out that he didn't fail to report to his unit at Fort Campbell, which was then going to deploy because he was afraid to go to combat. He's been to combat before. He actually asked for an assignment to a combat unit to return to Afghanistan, and but as he was late one night, as he was looking at his orders, and I've seen these orders, there's a requirement in his orders that he bring copies of your birth certificate. So imagine an 18-year military officer, a lieutenant colonel, a guy who's been selected for a full colonel, actually, and has yet to pin it on, being asked to prove once again his citizenship, which, of course, he had to do in order to get a commission in the Army. It already had to have been proven. The irony, the sheer irony of him being asked to bring copies of his birth certificate when you really can't get a commission without having presented one in the beginning. Why would he have to produce it again when he had these misgivings since the election of the fact that the president has never produced his? So he prayed about it. He sought advice from people he trusts, and made the decision to say, well, I will. Okay, I've got these orders. I will comply with these orders if someone proves to me that they emanate ultimately from a commander-in-chief who is a legitimate office holder. That was his position. So you've been accurate in everything you've said.
Yeah. Tony, let me ask you this. You know the UCMJ better than probably half the people I know. Under the UCMJ, under Title 10, they're not allowed to bring up their political views. Is the Army basically claiming in a nonchalant way that by the colonel actually bringing this up, or has there been any inference of it, that he's basically bringing in his politics? Is that why they're being such pricks about this?
Well, I think there's an element of that to it. I think they see this as a political action that really isn't authorized for a person in uniform.
Yeah.
But once we get down to actually preparing for a court-martial, we don't think much about politics. We think about what is the evidence of the offense? What does it prove? What does it not prove? What defenses can we raise for a client under the law? And of course, we're limited by the law. And before I ever got involved in the case, Betty, it's important for you to understand that the judge in the case had already made rulings that prohibited Lieutenant Colonel Lakin from bringing in evidence that he wanted to bring in. So at the late point in which I joined the case, I was handicapped. Well, we continue to be handicapped by the fact that there are the defense that he wanted to raise, he is no longer allowed to raise in the court. So that having been said, I've been quoted in various sources as saying that he's all but convicted now. Basically, the fact that he's probably going to be convicted of violating the orders is not an indication that he or I are giving up. That's not it at all. But if you are sent into battle without a weapon, then the prognosis is not good, and I think you understand that. So,
I do.
So
I've
I've had people call, I've had people send emails that criticize me and us for throwing in the towel, giving up, surrendering. You need to go on the offense. Well, that's all well and good, but if you don't have any offense to put up, if your offensive team doesn't show up that day, and all you have is a defense, that there's really not much you can do.
I got to tell you, Neal, anybody who would be stupid enough or ignorant enough to read something like that in an article, which I did read, and I laughed at it. Actually, that statement that you're basically giving up. For anybody to turn around and send you, of all people, an email, you're giving up, they don't know you.
Right.
They don't know your tactical abilities.
Well,
I got to tell you, they don't know you.
Well, that's right. And so, I try to be honest and straightforward with everybody I talk to, because that's the way I was raised. And so, if you ask me a straight question, I'm going to give you a straight answer. You might not like the answer. It might not be the one you want to hear, but you're always going to get the straight answer. And if it's a legal question, if it's about military law, I've been doing that for almost 27 years, and you're right, nobody knows it better than I do. There may be people who know it as well, but nobody knows it better than I do. And if I tell you that something's happening for a reason, it's happening for a reason, and that's just it. And I also got to tell you, Betty, and I have not been influenced by any political actor or politician in any way. I do what's in the best interest of my client in every single case, and I am immune to influence from outside sources, because that's, I have an oath too, and my oath is to zealously represent my client. And understand that when I represent clients in the military, the goal we would all like to have is to be acquitted of charges, but sometimes the evidence and the facts and the circumstances don't allow for that. So the next level of defense for someone who cannot be acquitted under the evidence is to achieve the best possible outcome in the circumstances.